Thank you for joining us to hear our keynote speaker, Mr. Boudreaux. He's the second vice president and head of PR for the National Beat Baseball Association. Mr. Boudreaux was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, cancer of the eyes, at age 14 months, which left him almost completely blind by the age of 5. He chose to give back at a very young age, working with nonprofit organizations focused on cancer and individuals with disabilities. He has served on the board of directors and in officer positions with the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life, Today's Advocacy Group, Texas Youth Leadership Forum, and Texas A&M Association for Blind Students. Mr. Boudreaux graduated with honors from Texas A&M University with a degree in communications and a degree in sociology. Following graduation, he pursued a career in vocational rehabilitation, working with the Texas Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services Division for Blind Services. He has served as a rehabilitation teacher, counselor, independent living coordinator, and is currently the Employment Assistance Specialist for the Southeast region of the state of Texas. His beat baseball journey began at the age of 9 nearly 24 years ago. All but one of those years was spent with one of the longest tenured teams with the NBBA, the Houston Bayou City Heat. He was elected to the board of directors in 2011 and was then elected as second vice president in 2014. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Boudreaux.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, getting close to that. Thank you for all being here. I know on a Saturday it's kind of hard to get the kids up and get going, but I appreciate each and every one of you being here. My presentation is basically my story. I want you to take away from this kind of where I've been, where I am today, and where your children can be in the future. Some of the advice and things I give in my presentation not only came from my own personal experience, but working with disabled youth and adults for over 10 years with the state of Texas. So just understand that, you know, I've walked in the shoes that your child is walking in now as someone with a disability, and I've done my best to overcome it. So just an overview of what I'm going to be speaking about. I'm going to touch on everything. Self-determination. Self-determination is believing that you have control over your own destiny. It's a combination of attitudes and abilities that lead people to make goals and give them the initiative to achieve those goals. And there's a couple things in that definition that I want you to really look at, and that's the attitudes and abilities part. You know, what I was lacking in abilities due to my disability, I made up for in attitude. I was a very stubborn child, very stubborn, I'm still stubborn, but I didn't take no for an answer. Anything I wanted to do, and I set my mind to, I got there. So having the right attitude, having the right positive attitude will get you where you want to go. 4 keys to self-determination. Making your own choices. That's big for a lot of our kids, especially at a very young age. It's hard for them to sometimes make their own choices. You as parents are doing it for them sometimes, teachers, and this is something that they will learn as they get older, and it's very important. Learning to problem solve. You know, we all have issues come up, whether we have disabilities or we don't. And we have to learn how to get through that. As someone with a disability, it's even more so important because you're going to have obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and you have to learn to get around that. Taking control and responsibility for your own life. Again, that's something that your children will do as they grow up, but it's very important to instill in them as they move through life, through school, and get into adulthood. And then being self-aware. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And that's sometimes hard for a young child to be able to pinpoint. It's hard for adults to be able to pinpoint, you know, knowing exactly what your strengths and weaknesses are and what to focus on. So That's very important as they get closer to high school and college and in the workforce to know where to focus on in terms of their future. Here's some pretty cute pictures of me. At 14 months, I was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which is cancer of the eyes. My dad was just rolling the ball to me, and we're playing the game, and he noticed something strange in my eye, and thought twice about going to the doctor, and then he just decided to take me. He said, "It doesn't look right." So we drove to the doctor, and less than 3 or 4 hours later, I was diagnosed with cancer in my left eye. And to tell you how severe the cancer was, they removed my eye less than a week later. So in order to get rid of the cancerous tumors and for it not to spread, they decided to remove my left eye at age 14 months. So I spent a good chunk of my childhood, probably from 14 months until 5 years old, in and out of MD Anderson. They thought the cancer was gone after removing my left eye, and then at age 3 they found 25 tumors in my right eye. So that was the most tumors they had ever found in a child's eye at the time. So I went through extensive radiation treatments and chemotherapy, and the doctors decided in the end to treat it with radiation and chemo rather than remove my right eye, and I'm very thankful they did that. It did form a cataract, so by age 5 I was only able to see basically light and shadows. And it progressively got worse because that cataract would get worse, and the doctors were not willing to operate on it at the time. These are some other pictures of me in childhood, and even though in all of these pictures I was at a point where I couldn't see anything, like I said, with light and shadows and things, I wanted to play baseball. And I wanted to play soccer, and luckily I was very strong even at that age, and I could kick the ball very far. So then my teammates made sure to tell me when they were kicking me the ball, and they just said, "Kick it as hard as you can down the field." It worked out very well for a while. So baseball was always a passion of mine as well, and I played t-ball, and the great part was I could hit the ball, I could run to the base, but they stuck me way out in right field just in case a ball got, out in the field. They knew I wasn't going to be able to find it, so they stuck me out in the corner. The sad thing was, it did get out there a couple times, and my shortstop was nice enough to run all the way in the outfield to pick up the ball for me. So, but I still participated. I got involved in. The other picture here is me in a football uniform. And just to give you some background, I was told many, many times by my parents, doctors, that I would never be able to play football. My brother played, and my dad was a football coach for 40 years, so it was a passion of mine, but I was told at a very young age that wasn't going to happen. So, now as you see, I'm stubborn, so I didn't listen, and I wanted to play football, and in 7th grade at Deer Park Junior High, I told them I was going to try out for the football team, which my parents were terrified, and the doctors were terrified, and the coaches didn't want a blind student coming out for football until they saw my size in 7th grade, which I was the biggest kid out there, and they said, "We can try to make this work. This is good." Being over 200 pounds in 7th grade and 6'1" at the time, they decided, yeah, that's a good thing. So I was also involved in band, which I absolutely loved. Playing percussion, it was something to where I learned how to play music by sound, and regardless of what was thrown, my way, we found ways of getting around it and figuring it out, and I was in band all the way through middle school. Awareness and acceptance, and this is something very important to me. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see pictures of my family and also my vision teacher through school. And I was extremely lucky. I had a teacher for the visually impaired from kindergarten all the way through graduation, which is unheard of. I mean, just imagine having one teacher working with your child for that long. I was extremely lucky and learned Braille and technology and all sorts of things, but learning to accept the disability and focusing on the abilities rather than the disability, which is hard sometimes. but just focus on what you can do instead of looking at what you can't. Also, inclusion, being involved with all other students, all peers, not just kids that were in my class who had disabilities or whatever the case may be. And also setting goals high enough to attain them, but really not limiting yourself. And that's something that I really think is important for your children, is to not limit themselves. If they want to do something, set that goal, and as parents support them until they get to where they want to be, or that you have to change course, but don't discourage them from attempting something they really have their heart set on. And these are some pictures from high school. I went through my awkward phase in junior high, so I started getting out of it a little bit in high school. I was very involved in sports. I was the first blind football player to ever start for a 5A high school in the state of Texas. Again, my size really helped. 6'3", 6'4", and 300 pounds in high school was a good thing. So I really enjoyed my time playing football. It was something we had to adapt. I had to wear a face shield so that nothing happened to the one eye that I did have, even though I couldn't see out of it. And I played center, where I snapped the ball to the quarterback and somebody would lead me to the ball, and then my coach's exact instructions were hit anything in front of you. I don't care what it is, hit anything in front of you. And I'll get to remember that, because I'll get to a little story in a little bit about that. Also, snow skiing. I skied in Park City, Utah for 8 or 9 years, and got to the point where I was skiing black diamonds, which are the hardest slopes in Park City. One thing was, at 6'4", 300 pounds, they had never really seen that before. The other thing was, when people saw a giant guy with an orange vest and such blind skier coming down a black diamond, they seemed to fall over themselves quite a bit. So that was my enjoyment. I mean, skiing was great, but just hearing my instructor laughing because she would see skier after skier after skier just falling because they kept looking, what is that? So, and the way that worked is I had an instructor who guided me. She would ski in front of me and she would just tell me right, left, and we worked as a team. And that's important, You are part of your child's team, and you will be able to assist them in getting where they want to go. Beat baseball. We talked about that in my intro. Beat baseball is a sport. It's baseball adapted for the blind and visually impaired. It's been around since the 70s, and I was lucky enough to get started playing beat baseball at 10 years old, which is unheard of. The sport's mainly for adults in terms of competitively. So I've been a part of the National Beat Baseball Association for 25 years, and I realized I needed to update my bio because this year I actually became president of the National Beat Baseball Association. So I'm the youngest president in the history of our organization. We have 35 teams in the United States, teams in Taiwan, Canada, the Dominican Republic, and now Argentina. So a very large, up-and-coming sport. The BCS Outlaws are the local beat baseball team here. If you get a chance to go out and watch them, they're fantastic. So, I graduated high school with honors at the top of my class. I believe I was number 50 out of 900 students. So I really worked hard to get where I wanted to be academically. Between learning Braille and using the technology and a combination of things, it was a struggle at times, but it was something I really set my mind to, and my parents really didn't give me an option. My dad was a teacher and coach for 40 years, and my mom was a principal for over 30 in the school district I went to. So I couldn't get away with much, and they also wouldn't allow me to settle for anything less than, achieving where I wanted to go. Getting involved. This is extremely important, whether your child is interested in working when they get old enough to work a part-time job or just volunteering. These are some of the organizations that I've been involved with: Relay for Life, Texas Youth Leadership Forum, American Cancer Society. I found a passion of volunteering at age 12. And at age 12 up until now, I've raised over $1,000 for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life every year. So it's been a passion of mine to get involved and give back. And just help out the people who helped me. So getting involved, getting away from those computer screens and TVs is extremely important for your kids, just to get out there, get the work experience, and also to be able to put that on a resume. I mean, a lot of people don't understand how much volunteer work can affect your ability to get a job. My first job, I had no work experience. I was straight out of college, but I had 2 pages of volunteer work, and that's what got me the job. So, all right. Remember I told you my coach's advice? Hit anything that's in front of you. Specifically, I reminded him of this. You said, hit anything. I don't care what it is, just hit them. We were playing Galveston Ball High School, and big game for us. And my coach decided to run 30 dive, which is a play right behind me. So they said, again, Blake, hit anything, knock him out of the way. I said, okay. So I got the defensive lineman in front of me, and I took him to the ground, and I kept going upfield because I heard my running back behind me yelling at me. And I saw a shadow, heard somebody moving. And so I reared back, and I lifted him up off the ground and took him to the ground as hard as I could. We went about 80 yards on that play, but then I realized the guy underneath me did not have shoulder pads on and was not happy about being taken to the ground. He threw his flag on me because he thought I did it intentionally until he was informed I was blind. So it all worked out. He's okay now, I hope. My tips for college. Some of your kids will be going to college, some may not, but these are just very important tips for any individual with a disability who's attending a university. Research the university. Figure out if it's the one that is right for you. And I will tell you this, listen to your kids when they tell you where they want to go. My mother was a graduate of Stephen F. Austin State University, which there is nothing wrong at all. It's a great university, but it wasn't for me. Being out in the country with nothing to do got me in a lot of trouble. So I wanted to attend Texas A&M University, but I was talked into going to SFA. And like I said, it just wasn't a good fit. So again, being stubborn, I ended up at A&M one way or another. So. Meet with the Office of Disability Services. Learning how to get through college and deal with all the different academic sides of things. Disability services can help quite a bit in terms of accommodations and getting your child where they need to be. So I was very lucky to have some wonderful disability services counselors at Texas A&M. And I wouldn't have been able to get through school without them. They were wonderful in guiding me and giving me the chance to succeed. Learning to live independently. This is a big one, and I spoke to your kids about this earlier. It's something that you need to prepare for now. I don't care if they're in 3rd grade, 5th grade, high school, whatever the case may be. Do not wait until 18 when they're moving out of the house to start teaching them how to be independent. My parents were wonderful, but they missed a few steps in terms of teaching me how to cook, teaching me how to do laundry, and I told your kids I learned a lot of things prior to figuring out how to cook, including myself. So it was probably pretty humorous watching me try to figure out how to cook something on the stove or the oven the first time in my apartment. So, and I run a lot of clothes not knowing how to do laundry. So just work on your kids' independent living skills, whether it's yourself, teachers in school, can also help with that, and agencies like Texas Workforce Rehab Services. Learning to advocate and speak up for yourself. A lot of your children will need to do that as they get closer to high school. Learning how to speak in their own ARD meetings is extremely important. I really encourage all students to attend their own ARD meetings, especially in high school, because they know what they need. They know what's going well, they know what's not going well, and I will just, as a former transition counselor working in the schools with kids, sometimes the teachers aren't aware of what your child needs. They think they know. They don't always know. So have the discussions with your kids, teach them how to advocate for themselves and speak up. That's going to be very important as they move along in the future. And don't get discouraged. You know, that's something that I've said time and time again. College was not easy for me. You know, life in general has not been easy, as it's not easy for any of us. But I've had to overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle on a daily basis. You know, I've never been able to drive, so getting from point A to point B has often been pretty difficult. And thank goodness for technology and Uber and Lyft and some of the things that have come around in the past few years. And, you know, just learning that things are going to be tough, but not giving up. I don't care if it's a sport your child's involved in, just teaching them not to quit until you've exhausted all options, teaching them to get through school, teaching them to get through that freshman year of college, which if you saw the grades I made my freshman year of college, I'd never seen those letters before on a grade sheet. So I didn't send it to my parents, they kept asking for it. They finally figured out what happened, and it's hard to explain. Seeing all A's and a couple B's and then seeing these funny letters on there, I don't know what happened. It's one of those things, always keep trying and don't give up regardless of the situation. College is about endurance. I don't care what anybody tells you. You don't have to be brilliant to get through college if you're willing to stick it out. I had many friends at Texas A&M who were not the sharpest people in the world, but guess what? They made it. They have good careers to show for it. So just working hard to get through it. This was one of the proudest days of my life, and my parents probably cried the entire day. My mom's a very emotional woman, and she cried the night before, the morning of, through graduation, at dinner after graduation. So, you know, they honestly, and they told me they never expected when they first found out that I was going to be blind that I would get that far. They didn't know what to expect. So graduating Texas A&M with honors with 2 degrees was something they didn't see in my future. And although I started out, you know, at a different university and had to work my way back to A&M, I got there. And it's a very, very proud moment. It was the culmination of a lot of people's hard work, not just mine. The people who assisted me through it, and, you know, just getting where I needed to go. This is quite possibly the most important thing for an individual with a disability, is learning how to communicate. Learning how to disclose your disability is something that a lot of the adults I work with in my profession do not know how to do. It's extremely important in high school, college, and especially the workforce. If you cannot speak up and tell people what your situation is, you're not going to get that job. If you go in that interview and you are not comfortable with your disability, you're not going to get the job. I was somebody with 2 degrees. In those first probably 40 job applications I put in, I didn't get a hit. The first 5 or 6 interviews that I went to, I didn't get hired because I did not know how to explain myself. I did not know how to communicate my disability. I was afraid of my disability and therefore translated for that employer. When I learned to go in there with confidence, to explain to them, yes, I am blind, but I know I can do this job, and this is how. To be able to ask when I needed help, but try to do everything independently, was when things started to change for me. And also be an example for other people with disabilities. Some of the decisions I made at A&M were not based on just me. I wanted to create a better future for the people who came behind me. I'll share a quick story about a professor I had at Texas A&M. I'm not going to name any names, but I took a statistics course at Texas A&M, and the first day I walk in, you could tell I couldn't see, and the professor walked over to me, "Excuse me, sir, I think you're in the wrong class." I said, "Is this statistics?" He said, "Yes." And I said, No, I'm in the right class. He said, well, my class is very visual, so I strongly recommend you go in and changing classes. He didn't know that stubborn thing about me, you know. I guess it wasn't easily, apparent to him that I wasn't going to move. So at that point, I decided, you know what, not only am I going to do well in this course, I'm going to make sure that I make a point. I studied harder in this course than I ever studied in my entire life. I knew questions he was going to ask before he even asked them. I prepared for every class. Every time I went there, I was the one raising my hand and answering the questions. I got the highest grade in the class on the midterm. Over half of his class dropped the course before the semester was over. That's how tough this professor was. I also got the highest grade on his final, and I was the only A in his entire course. You would think that would have taught him a lesson. He sends me an email. I noticed you signed up for advanced statistics in my course. My advanced statistics is even more visual, and I strongly suggest you look for another professor. I was front row in his course the next semester. I had another point to prove. And I worked even harder. And again, that midterm rolled around and I scored a perfect score on his midterm where most people failed. The next day, I think it all clicked. He said, can anybody answer this question besides Blake? And a girl raised her hand and she said, oh, so you think Blake is smarter than us? And he walks over to his desk and pulls up the sheets of the midterms and he goes, according to this, absolutely. And after that, it was a whole different situation. He was willing to work with me. He accommodated me in every way for the rest of the semester. I had a friend of mine who's totally blind who had him 5 years later. Best professor she ever had. He was willing to bend over backwards for her. So being that example for other people with disabilities, educating, making people realize the capabilities rather than the disabilities is extremely important. So encourage your kids to not only speak up for them, to not only do things for themselves, but also for people behind them. Another quick tidbit about that professor, he ended up getting diagnosed with cancer about 7 years after I had him. He walked out of the elevator at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and he wasn't aware that he would be seeing me again, but they had a giant wall-sized poster of me as you got off on the 3rd floor, because I did a lot of advertising for MD Anderson, so he's staring straight in my face as he gets off that elevator. He worked for 2 weeks to find my number, called me crying, and said, I didn't know you lost your sight from cancer, and this is what I'm dealing with, and I stayed in contact and helped him through his situation until he was in remission as well, so you never know how life's going to turn out, but that was just a little interesting story. I started working in 2008 with DARS. Like I said, I was working in a totally different field. I was doing public relations and marketing for a holistic wellness company. And I got a call from my DARS counselor saying, hey, we have a job opening and we think you'd be great at it. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. What's the pay? And they told me, and I said, no, thank you. Then I thought about it, and I said, well, let me go interview and see what this is all about. And I interviewed, and the gentleman who was hired, he said, I'll let somebody know in 2 weeks. He called me the next day. He said, I want to offer you this job. And I said, oh, well, what's the pay? And he told me again, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Took 24 hours, and I thought about it, did some soul searching, and I decided to start working for DARS, and it was the best decision I ever made. I thought I could give back. I thought I could help people, and right off the bat working with DARS, I went into people's homes as a rehab teacher, saw people who had just lost their sight, who had no clue what to do in life, who were not motivated, who were sitting there on the couch doing absolutely nothing. And for the past 10 years, I've been working with youth and adults to get them what they need in school and prepare them for the future, and also help them find employment once they get out. So I've changed jobs quite a bit. I was a transition counselor here in College Station for almost 3 years, which was some of the best times I've ever had. I was an independent employment assistant specialist, which is what I am now. And I go into employers and teach them about the abilities of our clients, teach them about the technology, teach them that, you know, your children are more than capable of working just like everybody else. So It's a passion of mine. I love what I do, and I've been with the agency for 10 years now. I hit 10 years in January, which for something I was hesitant about at the start, it's pretty amazing. But I've now worked with over 1,200 blind and visually impaired, and also other disabilities, autistic, Down syndrome. Our clients, have a variety of disabilities, and it's been an amazing ride. It really has. The stubbornness thing again. It's a recurring theme. I really don't take no for an answer. If I want to do something, I do it. Beat baseball is a very, very rough sport. You are diving on the ground every single play trying to stop a beeping ball going a million miles an hour. It's very rough. After 25 years, I feel like I'm 80 because of beat baseball. So I actually tore both of my meniscus and my MCL. I tore it the first practice of the season a couple years ago, and then I tore it again at the World Series. And I played 2 games and won 2 games on a torn meniscus at the World Series because my coach said, "You can't walk, you're coming out of the game." I said, "I can still pick up the ball, watch me." So, and I did. Probably did some more damage to it, but I did. Had to go through rehab. I went through a lot of rehab and physical therapy, and fought my way back faster than they expected me to, and I ended up making the All-Star team in Indianapolis my first tournament back. So it was something I really prided myself in doing, and that's that initiative. That's setting goals. They told me I'd be out an entire year. It took me less than 5 months to get back because it was something I wanted, and I shot for that goal. Texas Workforce Vocational Rehab Services. If you are not registered with us and your child is over the age of 14, please do so. The rule used to be 10 for blind services, and it was 14 for general rehab services with all other disabilities, but now it's 14. So if your child is 14 years of age and is capable of working in the future, they need to be with our agency to be prepared for the future. There's a children's program with Health and Human Services. If your child is not 14 years of age, I strongly ask you to get involved with that if your child has a visual disability. If not, reach out to other resources. There's all sorts of groups and organizations out there willing to help, but again, reach out to those community agencies to get services for your children. Don't wait until they're 17, 18 years old and about to graduate to start getting them set up with these services. And there's something I'm very proud of, my Aggie ring. That was something I worked very hard at. That's my contact information, and I really want you guys to take that down. I don't have business cards because our office flooded during the hurricane, so they're redoing our cards to reflect where we currently are. So take down my phone number, my email address, contact me anytime if you need guidance with anything. I don't care if it's a personal question or if it's something having to do with services. I'm available at any time and can assist at any point with guidance for you or your children. So please take that to heart. I really don't mind getting phone calls or answering any questions or helping out where I can. So that's my job, and that's what I enjoy doing. But I want to open the floor up for questions, and I really do want as many questions as are in your head, and I do want you to ask anything. I've spoken in front of college kids, and those college kids are relentless. They'll ask you the most personal questions you could possibly imagine, and I will give you the answer because I don't shy away from things. So please ask. I don't care how personal it is or about the disability or whatever the case may be. So. And I'm not going to be able to see hands, so just start talking.
You said you worked with the autism community. How so did you do that?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of our blind and visually impaired students are autistic. They're not necessarily all diagnosed, but it is very, very prevalent in the blind community. And we just had a training with that in one of our meetings in Austin. So not only have I worked with autistic students, also with visual impairments, but we've been given quite a bit of training as of late to do so because we're seeing it more and more within the customers we serve. And it's one of those things, again, you have to kind of tailor the needs and services for each individual person because it depending on where they are on the spectrum, the services can be completely different. There's no textbook that's going to tell you how to work with somebody with autism. So case by case, working with whether they're low functioning or high functioning and getting them employed in the services they need, that's our job. So.
Have you ever worked with anyone with osteogenesis imperfecta?
I haven't actually, and that's surprising to me because I work with just about everything else. But
My 4-year-old has osteogenesis imperfecta type 4. My 7-year-old has autism spectrum. He's mild to severe. We're in the process now where he's very defiant, hitting his teachers pretty much every day. You get that phone call.
Right.
So, I mean, it's totally different dealing with autism than it is with the Boudreaux syndrome. So,
and I will tell you this, I've had clients of mine who were severe on the autism spectrum, plus they had blindness to boot. And we were able to find them jobs, able to provide job coaches and things to assist them in the future with getting them employed. And one of the ones who showed a lot of those severe symptoms as a child and the behavioral issues and everything else, now they're doing pretty well. There's always hope out there, and the fact is, you just have to keep working with your child, and there's services out there, expertise that can assist your student and child to get the job they want in the future and do some of the things that you may not think are possible right now. Any other questions?
Do you deal with patients that have degenerative diseases that maybe a job works for now, but as time goes on, it doesn't get better?
It's a great question. All the time. I deal with a lot of degenerative eye diseases and other disabilities that get worse. And thank God for technology, because technology can sometimes save us in some of those jobs. A lot of vision-related degenerative diseases, they may be able to use magnification and enlarge things, or use video magnifiers, or glasses, contacts at first, and be able to do the job just fine. But as that vision progresses and gets worse and sometimes goes away, we have to look towards speech, software on the computer that can actually read out everything to that person, Braille, so that they can feel and be able to do that. There's just about everything we can find nowadays that talks. There's talking scales, there's talking color identifiers, money identifiers. So whatever profession you can possibly think of, we have somebody who's visually impaired who sees fairly well, and someone who's totally blind who doesn't. Some of our clients that really give people hope and really baffles people on how they do it are our employees at NASA. We have several blind and visually impaired aerospace engineers at NASA, one of which ran the mission control during the last shuttle launch. So they use technology that allows them to read refreshable Braille and have computer technology that reads everything to them. So technology is really saving us in terms of keeping them in those positions. But services can be reopened, and we can also help them find a different job if that doesn't end up working for them. So they can come back to us when they need us. If they're losing that job, then we'll help them save it. If it doesn't work out, we'll give them a new one. Anything else? No, they're so shy. I usually get some really good ones. It's still early, exactly.
Like all for a while,
Good.
you talked about changing course. Now, I never want to tell somebody they can't do something, but when they start people against the wall.
Yeah.
What are some of your strategies you're getting people to think about how to change course, when to change course?
Well, it's one of those situations where as youth, our agency especially works with them to have realistic goals. We used to use a program called Choices, which gave you basically the job criteria for everything. what your capabilities, education level, and everything has to be to do those jobs. There's other programs through Texas Workforce on the Texas Workforce Commission website that will allow you to do some of the same things and kind of evaluate what the job functions are. I had a parent who came into my office when I was working here in College Station and told me her child wants to be an airline pilot. Problem was, he was totally blind, but she didn't want to tell him he couldn't be an airline pilot. Well, my goal was to get him in a realistic mindset. So I had him do career exploration and go to the airport and speak to some of the people in the different jobs at the airport. And now he wants to either do ticket or assist with baggage or help people with disabilities get around the airport. So he has all sorts of different goals that weren't a pilot, which is not something you want me doing or him doing or anybody else who can't see. So just allowing him a different perspective, giving him options, searching, and really not just telling him, no, you can't do it because you're blind, but giving him that experience to make the decision on his own that maybe he needs to change career paths. And Tracy was one of the ones who helped me out so much at Texas A&M. I owe half of my degree to her, so. Any other questions? But, you know, I told you at the beginning of my speech that it was something that I've worked very hard to get where I am, and I really am proud of what I've done. I have my own home, my own car, even though I don't drive it, my driver drives it. You know, a good career, everything I've set my mind to, I've been able to accomplish, and I want you to get your children to start thinking in that manner. Have them set goals for themselves. You know, I have clients all the time who their parents never thought they'd be able to live on their own, and now they're living successful lives. So don't give up, keep fighting through, and put all of these things in your children's head and try to make them as independent as possible when they leave your home to go out into the real world. All right, thank you very much.